Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
Welcome back to the show. Happy 2019, everybody. Hope you missed us.
We know we missed you.
Well, I missed the listeners. You not so much.
Thanks. You only have to do this with me every single time. Good to know I'm appreciated.
Listen, why would I start showing you appreciation now?
Touché.
It's only been 20-something years. So, welcome back. This is our first episode of 2019. This is issue number 35. And before we get started, Doc, how was your holiday?
It was actually pretty good. Got to see some family. My daughter got a lot of presents. My daughter got even more presents. I don't know where I'm going to put the presents.
Yeah, I've seen your house. You have a decent-sized house, but that playroom needs to be organized.
Yeah, that's never going to happen.
Probably not.
Having said that, she loves building with Legos.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are you taking her to go see the Lego movie?
We'll see. Not sure. I mean, we already saw Into the Spider-Verse, which was well worth it.
Oh, so. Absolutely. That was amazing. Oh, my God, it was so good. And so wonderfully meme-tastic. I love that they just threw in all of the little references to the Spider-Man doppelganger from the 60s and Spider-Man sitting behind the desk and all of the different internet memes involving Spider-Man. You pointed at me first. It was brilliant. And just the visual ability to tell that story, the computer graphics, and then some of the hand animation. And here's the other amazing thing. Both versions of Peter Parker that we see in the movie are very true to the character. Both the first Peter Parker in Miles's universe and the other Peter Parker that comes from 616,
right,
are both very clearly Peter Parker. And it was a testament to how well the writers were able to encapsulate both versions of the character while still giving them their own separate motivations and still being true to the overall thing, I guess, the overall character that is Peter Parker.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like we're hinting at a lot of Spider-Man related stuff.
Maybe that's because this episode is about J. Jonah Jameson.
You said that with a lot more punch than I anticipated.
Well, I figure he's a very fun character. He's a request by our patron, Matt, who wanted us to go over JJ. And I've been looking forward to this episode for quite some time because JJ is definitely one of the most entertaining characters in the Spider-Man mythos, such as it is. Speaking of mythos, by the way, I want to give a special shout out and thank you to Marvel Mythos, especially Liz for this little tidbit.
He's the one with the personality disorder, actually.
Hey, Capes on the Couch, second call out. Where's our Spider-Man episode? Because we need it.
Well, we're not doing Spider-Man directly, at least not this episode, but maybe there is room in the future for a Spider-Man MJ episode. I know that it was referenced on Twitter. We could maybe even bring back our friends from Popcorn Psychology. I forget which one of them is a marriage counselor. One of them is a marriage counselor, and so we could potentially do a specific episode, not necessarily on Spider-Man in general, but Spider-Man and Mary Jane and their marriage and the history of their relationship, and we can delve into some of the issues of them interacting with each other.
Wait, they had a relationship? What happened to that?
Yeah, I wonder what happened to that marriage. Oh, right. Damn you, Casada. Anyway, before we get started, as always, we like to do a little shout out to another podcast. This week, we're going to give our thumbs up to The Story Behind. This is a very short one. I know we tend to go on a little long. The Story Behind is no more than 15 minutes. Most episodes are about 5 to 10. And Emily Prokop gives a short and very informative story and explanation of some very common items or phrases or traditions or really pretty much anything. There's a book. It's available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any of your major retailers. It's a fun and informative little podcast if you just want to learn something. I think one of the recent episodes is about toilet paper and the history of toilet paper. So if you're interested in something like that, she just did Christmas traditions. There's any number of different little stories that can be told. And it goes back to 2016, I think, was when the show started. So the archives are pretty extensive. And again, it's a very short, informative. It averages about 7-8 minutes. Some of them run as long as 15. That's a lengthy one for her. But it's a very fun and informative podcast. And so in continuing with our tradition of plugging other shows, please give them a listen and follow them on Twitter. I believe it's Story Behind Pod is her Twitter account. So give her a listen and a follow and show her some love. So we're going to now get into J. Jonah Jameson as requested by our patron, Matt. J. Jonah Jameson was created by the late, great Stan Lee and the late, great Steve Ditko in Amazing Spider-Man #1, March 1963. So he did not make his appearance in Amazing Fantasy #15, which is technically Spider-Man's debut, but in Spider-Man's main series, his first solo series, JJ is there, and he has been an integral part of the Spider-Man story and a thorn in Spider-Man's side since day one.
Yeah, you would figure that someone that was that antagonistic towards Spider-Man would almost be viewed as an enemy. He never really reaches that level, at least not in my opinion. Thorn inside is a great description, as opposed to someone that Spider-Man considers to be a threat.
I would say antagonist. I would say he's a Spider-Man antagonist, but he is not a member of the Rogues Gallery, nor is he an enemy. And I think there is a distinction there. I know it doesn't sound like a distinction with the difference, but it is definitely a distinction that J. Jonah Jameson is an antagonist without rising to the level of an enemy. So John Jonah Jameson Jr., that's a mouthful in and of itself, was the son of John Jonah Jameson Sr., but he was raised by his uncle David, and young JJ thought David was his father, but later on the relationship was revealed. David was a veteran and was incredibly abusive to the boy, and was also responsible for getting him addicted to cigars as a child. And that is one of JJ's trademarks, is the ever-present cigar, along with the flat top haircut.
Right. I'd like to point out, though, that when this was first written, tobacco, nicotine, all of that wasn't considered as dangerous as we know it to be now. So it shouldn't automatically be viewed in this light of being this horrible situation. How could his uncle do that to him? We view that currently with the information we have. They didn't have that as much back then. As a matter of fact, there used to be advertisements about the number of physicians, what brand of cigarette they preferred. So that's how far we've come. Keep that lens when you think of someone like J. Jonah Jameson. He has that era in mind, and it starts to get pulled forward.
Yes, well, certainly, I think even in that era, getting a child addicted to cigarettes was viewed less than favorably, but be that as it may. So JJ served in World War II as a war correspondent. He returned home to his wife, Joan, who was sort of a high school sweetheart, and they had a son, John Jonah III. Joan, unfortunately, died in a mugging accident, and JJ worked at the Daily Bugle to mask his pain. He later came to run and own the paper, and this is where we meet him when he becomes the antagonist for Spider-Man. When Spider-Man appears on the scene, Jameson uses the paper to discredit the, quote, wall-crawling menace, one of many, many colorful nicknames he has for Spider-Man. Jameson is nothing if not a showman. And in some versions of this backstory, his hatred of Spider-Man stems from Spidey knocking his astronaut son John off the front page. John was the type of heroic individual that JJ feels should be lauded by society. And then along comes this masked menace, this costumed freak, this spandex superhero, any number of terms you want to use or that JJ uses. He does love his alliteration, and they take the spotlight away from his astronaut son, who should be a hero, who ends up becoming a werewolf and has his own issues much later on. We could do a separate episode perhaps on, John Jameson, and he dated She-Hulk for a while. It was a whole big thing.
Right. And also, when you think about it, the irony He was upset that his son was knocked off the front page. So then he takes the person that was now on the front page and makes sure at every opportunity he continues to put him on the front page. When you think about why there's a problem with that, you'll see why I think this is going to be one of the best skits we ever do.
Oh, yeah, no. We know you folks love the skits, but I promise you, this is one of the best. So Jameson later hires Peter Parker as a freelance photographer because Peter gets amazing pictures of Spider-Man in action. Of course, Jameson doesn't realize they're one and the same. So he often offers rewards for Spider-Man's unmasking or his capture. He even occasionally teams up with some villains to go after Spider-Man. Early on, he suffers his first heart attack after being threatened by a very angry Spider-Man who wants to know, basically, what's your deal? Why do you hate me so much? And Spider-Man, for all of his good-natured quipping, etc., is a still very strong individual. And if he threatens you, he can really do some damage to you.
Right.
You always know Spider-Man is, if Spider-Man isn't cracking jokes on you, your ass is grass.
Right. And if you want an example of that, see our episode with the Kingpin, where we point out that Peter Parker absolutely whooped him when they were in prison.
Curb stomp battle. Absolutely. So Jameson is responsible for hiring Mac Gargan, genetically enhancing him and giving him a suit of armor to work as the Scorpion, all to attack Spider-Man. That's how deep this goes. And the Scorpion, for those who are Spider-Man aficionados know, is one of the members of Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery, one of the more famous ones. Well, Jameson was directly responsible for his creation, and that is a guilt and an issue that Jameson has carried with him pretty much since it happened.
Whoopsie.
He later marries Dr. Marla Madison, a scientist who created a series of Spider Slayer robots. And then Marla's niece, Maddie Franklin, operates as Spider-Woman, although once again, Jonah is unaware. You know, for all of the costumed characters that surround him and interact with him on a regular basis, and for the fact that he is a newspaper reporter, he makes Lois Lane look like, you know, she deserves a Pulitzer for, you know, or a Peabody Award or any of the other various awards that could be given to reporters for journalism, because Jameson is just, whoop. When it comes to costumed heroes and superheroes, Jameson is completely oblivious to who they really are.
Well, when you have to survive with so many of them around, and acknowledging anyone besides the one that you've made your target would lead you to be the biggest hypocrite in the universe. There's an old saying that indicates a man does very well ignoring information that's going to destroy their ability to keep their job. That's not the quote. It's way more eloquent than that, but the point still stands. He knows he has to keep everything focused on Spider-Man, because if he doesn't, everyone's going to call him out immediately.
Exactly, and that's referenced. We'll get to that in a little bit, but that is definitely referenced in the character's history. So Jameson ends up blackmailed by the Hobgoblin because he created the Scorpion, and Jameson gives up control of the Bugle, which is later bought from him by a millionaire who uses the paper to promote Spider-Man. This rankles Jameson just a titch. During Civil War storyline, when Spidey unmasks, Jameson doesn't really take it well. And again, that's putting it very mildly. He feels betrayed by Peter Parker, who he considered to be an honest young man. Then he has another heart attack after arguing with Parker over payment of photos. And yet again, during Take Your Child to Work Day at the Bugle. And this is a great episode, or a great issue rather, where he's actually in a psychiatrist's office explaining after the heart attack and going back over his history, exactly what it is that happened that led him to reach this point. That's where we learned a little bit about the backstory of David and what happened with Joan, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's Web of Spider-Man or the Tangled Web of Spider-Man, because Web of Spider-Man, I think, was from the late 80s, early 90s. I believe this was the Tangled Web of Spider-Man in which this particular issue came about. And each issue was about a different person in the sphere of Peter Parker. And this particular issue was about Jameson, who, like I said, had a heart attack while arguing over the fact that kids were running around the Bugle, and naturally he didn't want that. And he ends up going to a psychiatrist's office. It goes about as well as you'd expect, although dare I say it may go even better than what's going to happen to him in a little while.
Well, we set the bar pretty low. I know we're foreshadowing so much, but I haven't been this proud since, well, I'm proud of every episode, but this one is special in terms of the skit.
So then Jameson becomes mayor of New York City, and he uses city resources to go after Spider-Man, because that's how you want to spend taxpayer dollars.
Oh, there is such a tangent that we could go on right now in our society that I will gladly avoid.
Yes, let's not touch that one. So Marla dies when Alistair Smythe attacks him, and she jumps in front of him to protect him. He ends up blaming himself, and he tries to have Smythe killed, but Spider-Man, being who he is, protects Smythe, and he says flatly, "No one dies."
That sounds like a very good tenet to live by, to be honest with you.
It does, and it annoys Jameson to no end, because JJ wants Smythe put to death. He wants the death penalty for Smythe because he killed his wife. So Jameson, understandably, is not exactly thinking logically. I think we'll let that one, I don't want to say let it slide, but it's certainly understandable. Your wife dies, you're going to be pretty upset at the person who made it happen. So then he works with the superior Spider-Man, which is Doc Ock in the body of Spider-Man. Amazing arc. I know it sounds nuts, but it's very well done. He works with the superior Spider-Man to patrol New York City with spider slayers, but the robots turn on the citizens, and Jameson resigns as mayor over this.
You mean an overarching technology that's used to control most of society ends up backfiring on the people that created it? Who told that story?
Yeah, it's very far-fetched. Next, he starts working for a news channel, but he gets fired after unknowingly helping to spread a virus. So then he starts a blog called Threats and Menaces, and he gets an exclusive interview for this blog with Spider-Man, where Spider-Man reveals his identity to Jameson, who says that he will support Spider-Man more in the future. And this was a very well-written issue. I think it's issue number 6 of Peter Parker, The Amazing Spider-Man, or The Spectacular Spider-Man. It's recent. It's Chip Zdarsky, and the writing is incredible. And we see Jameson admit that basically this vendetta against Spider-Man is all that he has, because his father died. I'm not going to get into the whole fact that his father married May Parker later on. That's something that it's not entirely germane to Jameson as a character. It is interesting to note that at one point he and Parker were almost stepbrothers, basically.
Right.
But his father ends up marrying May Parker. Then he dies. Marla dies, and she gets brought back to life during the whole clone saga. And then that clone dies. Maddie Franklin gets brought back, and she also dies again, because Spider-Man and clones go, I don't want to say hand in hand, because they don't go together well, but they're put together well, or they're put together often, I should say. In any event, it's very well written that Jameson is a broken man who has nothing left except this vendetta against Spider-Man, and he feels that this is all he has to hang his hat on. And this, I think, is a good segue into the issue segment, because that issue really boils down the essence of J. Jonah Jameson and everything that he is. He is an angry man who feels that all he has left to hang his hat on is this vendetta, because his first wife was killed in the mugging accident, and he felt he couldn't protect her, much like Spider-Man felt he couldn't protect Uncle Ben when he had the opportunity. His niece, his father are all dead. His son is off dealing with his lycanthropy, and so he has a very strained relationship with John. This anger, sometimes I feel like it can be said, is all that keeps Jameson alive. And so he thrives on that, even as he realizes that it's destroying him. That's a handful to unload. Doc, take a crack at it.
Everyone needs a goal, an overarching goal that's going to allow for some level of growth, because we know that society is going to change over time. Jameson has somehow managed to pervert this. He's taken the idea that Spider-Man is a menace, which we've heard so many times, and expounded on it to the point that he is his personal enemy. It's not reciprocated, though. Spider-Man has way more on his plate than worrying about what some guy in the journalism business has to say about him all the time. When he gets a down moment, he might address it, but it's not his be-all, end-all. So we have an uneven relationship. Jameson could compensate, in theory, with other parts. He's come across as an intelligent enough guy that, especially in the journalism business, we have enough topics at any point to branch out into other things. He's in New York, for crying out loud. You're telling me there's nothing else going on besides Spider-Man? I know it's big, but you're telling me he can't get other people to work on other topics for a large, well-published newspaper? That was his personal choice. He's using a position of power to continue an agenda that I'm not sure everyone else agrees with. Well, I know for a fact that it's not 100%. In other words, if you did a poll, how many people like Spider-Man? How many people dislike Spider-Man? I don't think it's even 50%. I don't think, and depending on who's writing it, it could get as high as maybe 70%, and so Spider-Man is an underdog. But for the most part, you're never going to get 100% dislike. So I doubt he's maximizing his position from a business standpoint. Having said that, I don't think he cares anymore. I think he realizes that, I think I already said it, right? If he approaches any other part of his life outside of saying Spider-Man is a menace, he's going to get called to the carpet. People are going to recognize that you have done nothing else besides deal with this individual for your entire career. And it's not just his business, it's also his personal life. You've given plenty of examples of that. His son gets taken down. His family has been affected. He doesn't have anyone around him anymore. Does that necessarily mean that he has to deal with just Spider-Man? Last time I checked, there were plenty of other villains that had done some pretty horrible things to his business, to him personally. But he never approaches them with the same vitriol that he does with Spider-Man. For me to take a guess as to why he would do that with him versus anyone else, it's because he would have to create a new construct. Even without knowing who Spider-Man was, he didn't always know it was Peter Parker. He already had every other segment filled in. He knew what Spider-Man had for breakfast. He probably thought Spider-Man ate bugs. He knew who Spider-Man's main attraction was. It was Mrs. Spider-Man. I'm saying all of this facetiously because he already had that schema in his head. And it's very easy once every piece is filled in to battle that, as opposed to continue to try and figure things out. You pointed out that how can a guy miss so much about so many of the other costume people around him? Because he's not trying. He doesn't care about that. He has his answers. Life can seem very easy and very simple when you already have all the answers. The problem comes when outside forces point out to you those answers are wrong. And we've seen so far that whenever someone has pointed out a wrong answer to Jay, he does not respond well at all. He doubles down. He's not only correct the first time, he's going to put in as much effort as he possibly can to prove that you are wrong, that you've always been wrong. And if you challenge him again, you're going to be proven wrong time after time. Now, reality says something completely different. But why would you care when you're still getting the same results that you've gotten before and you're not trying to expand to anything else? I think it's a crime that someone in that position would continue to beat this same drum over and over without even considering information around him that's pointing him in a different direction. But he can point to the fact that he survived this way. And his own survival, his own bias, is what's going to lead him to continue down this path for a long, long time. The irony of that, of course, is he can point out he's still surviving, but all the research says that when someone stagnates like this, it leads to a shorter life. So, congratulations. You lived the longest life you could with the shortest possible timeline, if that makes sense.
So, like DJ Khaled said, you played yourself.
That's fair.
Or, Ice-T. You played yourself. So, the next thing I want to talk about, we referenced a little bit about his son, John. He has him on a pedestal. And this is a perfect example of where he contrasts John with Spider-Man. John is an astronaut. He's publicly known. He doesn't wear a mask. He idolizes and lionizes John as the type of person that people should emulate. Now, astronauts are very brave individuals, and they are certainly heroes, and they are a very real type of individual that you or I could meet. Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, et cetera, et cetera. They are real people, and I feel that they should certainly be made to be heroes. Jameson feels that the definition of hero is exclusive to police, fire, military, astronauts, people of those professions. Someone like Spider-Man challenges that because he does good, but he wears a mask. And it's also personal for Jameson because, as I said, in some versions of the telling, when Spider-Man first appears on the scene, well, we were going to run the story about Jameson returning to Earth in a space capsule, but Spider-Man shows up. And I think that was referenced in Spider-Man 3, or maybe it was the second one. It was 2 or 3. There was a big to-do about John Jameson returning to Earth and Spider-Man stealing the headlines. So, Doc, if you can talk a little bit about the fact that Jonah idolizes his own son, who, again, becomes a werewolf, becomes a hero, and in some ways becomes the very thing that Jameson hates. And how does he reconcile that love and adoration of his son, the public astronaut, with his hatred of costumed heroes, of which his son is also a member?
That's a fantastic dichotomy. The first thing I think of with someone who's idolizing a public figure like his son, it tells me that they may have had aspirations of their own. Not to say that Jonah is completely private, but it's hard to compare a business owner of a publication with an astronaut, one of the most quote-unquote glorious and potentially dangerous jobs there are. Also, astronauts are explorers. They are going into, for human nature, the relative unknown. When you have a situation that person is potentially expanding our horizons compared to Jonah, who we've already established is trying to concentrate his circle and just keep it in that one view, he, I think, is impressed by the fact that his own flesh and blood is able to do what he can't. And that can be a good thing, because we, as a society, prefer the idea that the generation after us is a little bit better than we were. That's the general trend, or at least what we wish for. And I don't think Jameson is any different about that, except there's something outside of his control that limits that possibility. The reality of what limits it is what happened to his son, and now his son has to come to grips with what was potentially a very traumatic series of events, and now trying to find his own path a different way. But Jameson can't handle that. He does not want to confront that side of it. And initially he didn't know, so that's also a caveat. But he can go back to the idea that other people have created another barrier for someone he cares about. Someone that was supposed to do things he wasn't capable of. But now, in his way, the man has got him down again. So, seeing his son go through that, he has to find a way to fit that into his schema again, because the pathway is blocked. So who do you think he's going to end up finding a way to blame when things aren't going the way he expected?
He's going to blame himself.
Let's make this best out of 2 chances.
He's going to blame his son.
Okay, 2 out of 3.
Spider-Man.
Thank you. All right.
I knew I'd get it eventually.
Yep. Well, the good news is you did. Jonah doesn't. I mean, he blames Spider-Man. He answers the question, but the point is he doesn't look at the other options. At least you looked at the other options. So that's where that goes. In terms of him reconciling things with his son, I'm not sure he is looking to do that. What I mean is other people are going to have to come to him and confront him about things. He is not looking to confront other people about potential problems. In other words, he doesn't go to Spider-Man and say, hey, how do I get you to be an unmasked hero? He just points out the fact that he is not the way he wants him to be, and Spider-Man is the one that confronts him saying, what's your problem? Similar thing with his son. He knows that things didn't go the way they were supposed to. And one of these days, the son that he knows and loves and admires is going to be back because that's just the way it's supposed to be. As opposed to saying, hey, son, I know you're going through a really rough time here. I bet you have a few Shaggy dog stories for me. Womp womp. Had to say it. Sorry.
I love you and hate you at the same time for that. A, because it's a pun, and B, I love Shaggy dog stories.
Exactly.
They're amazing.
Right.
Better Nate than Lever.
Okay, you say you hate and love me, and then you make a reference like that. That's you're incredible.
Thank you.
The point being, someone like Jameson always waits for other people to come to him for outside things. He will push his agenda, his one agenda, on everyone else all the time and just drown out the rest as noise. So you want to talk about the idea of spheres of influence? His is incredibly concentrated, incredibly small, incredibly dense, and difficult to penetrate, but sends out these radio waves everywhere. That's my description of why it's going to be very difficult, not just with his son, but with anybody that he comes close to really crack that shell.
Fascinating. So the last thing I want to address is Jameson as a reporter and as a newsman. And this is something that we discussed somewhat in our very first episode, Eddie Brock. And I find there's no coincidence that the two of them are so closely linked to Peter Parker, and they're both news folks because they both work at the Bugle. So Eddie Brock, we talked a lot about journalistic integrity and journalism there. Jameson as a journalist and as a reporter and as the editor of the Bugle, etc., his journalistic integrity varies throughout time, throughout the tellings. At various points, and particularly very early on, he's a very dedicated reporter, and he is always looking to get the scoop, and he's always looking to get the honest story. But particularly as it relates to Spider-Man, certainly anything related to Spider-Man is always skewed. His journalistic integrity, I'll say, with regards to other non-Spider-Man related stories, has been shown to be a mixed bag. Sometimes he's diligent in all other stories. It's just Spider-Man in which, regardless of whatever is actually happening, he labels him as a menace. Other iterations, he's shown to have a more flexible relationship with the truth and will say and do whatever it takes to sell papers or to sell the story. What impact does that have on his psyche, or where does that come from, this ability to flex reality to fit your preconceived notions? I guess this is a follow-up almost to the last point with respect to his son, that he's got the answers. He knows exactly what's going on, and it's very easy for him to fit reality to it. But I guess where does that stem from, though, in terms of journalism? Because Eddie Brock, we talked about, he wanted to find the truth, and Jameson, for all of his reporting, seems to be averse to the real truth.
This answer may not be as deep as you would think. Because of the position that Jameson is in as a businessman, he has other motivations. I know we've run the Spider-Man thing into the ground at this point. That's fine. But he has papers to sell, or modern media. He has to get the likes. He needs to get the web page views. He needs to get the advertising, all of the things that allow for a business to survive. There's no question that that's always true for any media source. Having said that, there is, in general, a consensus that you do not sacrifice the truth for sales. In general. For someone like Jameson, who is in a position where there are other personal things that have allowed him to have a certain level of success, that becomes skewed because he gets a pop. What am I referencing?
Wrestling.
Yes, I'm referencing wrestling, but that wasn't exactly what I meant. What I meant is the pop is when something so germane to the experience of media elicits a strong emotional response. Spider-Man does that for the Daily Bugle. Jameson recognizes that. So whether it's conscious or unconscious, he knows that sells. So he's going to make that the focal point. And because of his own personal bias, that's going to slant the paper itself. So you combine those two facts. They may not be totally directly related, but they're going to lead to this ultimate result of what becomes, pardon my French, a rag sheet. It's something that's going to be the National Enquirer of the local media, and it's going to be focused on Spider-Man. Sometimes those things get information right. I'm not trying to say this in an insulting way. If it comes across that way, I apologize. But we know, or at least in my experience and my observation, when something gets on TMZ, I may say, wow, that's kind of sleazy. But I also notice there's some truth behind it. They break sometimes very major news stories before major news outlets do.
I'm pretty sure they broke Michael Jackson's
Correct.
death.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. So, on one hand, and we know this is true because Peter Parker works there, because Eddie Brock worked there, some of this information is going to be correct and it's going to be instant. But it doesn't happen all the time. And if you want to be a trusted news source, you have to be consistent. Consistency is something that's lacking because there's that other motive. I know what sells right now. I don't have to worry about the future. I don't have to worry about expansion. I don't have to worry about integrity. I'm getting the result I want right now. And if there's anything that Jameson has shown, he likes instant gratification. He'll make decisions on his personnel based on yesterday's sales, even though just about any business would say, wouldn't you want to look at the last few months at least before making major changes?
Look at trends.
Right. So he kind of throws that out of the window because why would that matter to what's happening today? For someone that seems to be so incredibly focused on keeping things exactly the way they are, he stays in the moment very well. Too well. It leads to a lack of future planning. And while I can't knock someone for doing things that are going to get them $1 now, I'd like to think that they also have the type of systems and plan in place that'll allow them to make much more in the future. I'm not sure Jameson ever has that malleability to do that.
Hey, don't knock the hustle.
Of course not. It's not as if people that are doing things like podcasts would want to expand and have other connections and networking that would lead to further success in other realms. Perish the thought. But I'm willing to say that someone like Jameson doesn't go that far. He's an intelligent man from the types of discussions that you see written for the character, but he lets his own immediate need for results blind him to that future planning. That's my thought. Obviously, other people may have other ideas, but that's what I see.
All right. I can't disagree with that. Now, moving into the treatment in universe. Now, this is one of those instances in which Jameson, he has no superpowers. So the distinction between some of the in-universe treatment and the out-of-universe treatment is going to be very, very similar on account of we don't have to factor those into account. But what would you say if you were a psychiatrist or a therapist working with J. Jonah Jameson, editor of the Daily Bugle?
I'm grateful that certain events have already happened because I would gladly do my best at some point to get Peter Parker in the room. Maybe not the first few sessions, but at some point it has to happen. I need to have an example of the interaction that Jameson and his target, his object, if I can just focus on that and see how he conducts himself and coach him through that, then I think we could produce some change. It's really difficult for me to consciously say that I would expect much change from him without the stimulus present. And I know I can do that because I'm not fearing that Jameson is going to hurt his enemy. He's not capable of it. He's not going to punch Peter Parker in the face. Even if he tried, it wouldn't do anything. So this is much different than, for example, what I said for Eddie Brock. I said he could focus on other things. He doesn't have to have Spider-Man immediately there. Not run away, but maybe have some distance. And with someone like the Kingpin in that episode, I think I alluded to it as well, where, yeah, you might actually just need to get him completely away, depending on the circumstance. Jameson can be right there because he's the type of guy you need to rip the Band-Aid off. You don't peel it slowly. He wants instant results. He may not get it, but he's going to get instant feedback and someone else interpreting that feedback because he can't trust himself to do it properly. So that's where I would go with it. I would have to make sure that he'd be comfortable enough to do that. I think his ego would allow for that, meaning I don't think I would have to try hard to say, hey, do you want to talk to Spider-Man? He might say no because he doesn't like the person. In theory, he says he doesn't like the person. But the opportunity to deal with Spider-Man again, he wouldn't pass that up. So I think we could work that way. I think Peter Parker would give that opportunity because he's tried himself and he might like that extra party to balance things out. But even then, I'm saying this has a low chance of success. I hate saying that, but I have to be honest. When a person has no interest whatsoever in improving any aspect of their life, it's going to make it tough to push forward.
Okay. All right. I don't disagree with that last part. The fact that if someone doesn't want to make the change, they're not going to. We've discussed that on a number of occasions, that you can't help someone who isn't willing to help themselves. And Jameson certainly, I think, lacks the self-awareness necessary to make those changes because he doesn't. It's not even a matter of not having the intelligence, though, because we've established he's a very intelligent man. He just doesn't lack the self-awareness to understand that the problems, quote unquote, the problems that he faces are not these external sources. It's his projection of his dislike for the individuals involved in those issues that makes him feel that, well, Spider-Man is the source of all of my problems. Spider-Man is the issue here. Maybe physician heal thyself, so to speak, but he doesn't have the self-awareness to do that. Out of universe treatment now certainly we don't have Spider-Man in our world, but we do have news people, we do have reporters, we do have news organizations. And if it can be said, and I'm really trying hard to be cautious here because I don't want to say one way or another, to upset anybody. But if there were individuals that were so obsessed with a particular topic that any attempts to dissuade them that whatever object of their ire was not as malicious or horrible as they perceived, how do you treat that out of universe? How do you treat a real person whose fixation on a given topic or subset of the population or whatever it may be is not the boogeyman that they perceive it is? And keeping in mind, of course, that these people have a large sphere of influence and the ability to say, I think X individual or X type of people are horrible. You should too. And here's why. And listen to my radio show, listen to my TV show, read my editorial, what have you. How do you fix those types of people? Not fix. I'll rephrase that then. How do you address those types of individuals?
I'm going to give a disclaimer, which goes back to transference and countertransference, meaning the things, whether they're conscious or unconscious, that I bring to the table in any discussion with a patient and anything that the patient brings to me that are biases. I am aware that I have biases, but I may not be aware of those particular biases for that individual. And if that individual brings them to me, I may have an initial response and reaction that is not beneficial to the patient. So depending on the content that the patient is bringing in the first place, I have to make a decision as to whether or not I recuse myself and I get that person a therapist or doctor that is more suited to deal with that particular situation, or I acknowledge that even if I don't see eye to eye on personal values or issues or whatever with that patient, I can work through it. But I have to be very honest with myself at the start. If I don't, then I can do serious damage. And I never want to do that, of course. That's against my oath. So I'm going to leave that as the initial part. Once you get past that point, it's best to give as limited and concrete examples as you can to point out that there is no such thing as an absolutely bad person. Oh my goodness, I know I'm going to get hate mail for this, and that's not my intention. What I'm pointing out is when you're doing therapy with someone, you do not want people to consider, depending on what society we're dealing with, half of the population is evil. Because many people get to that point in their mindset, and that is a destructive mindset. It's not possible for a society to survive with that mindset. So I have to crack the wall. What I mean by that is take the politics out of it, people. That's not what I meant. I swear to you. I'm saying that if a person is your neighbor, they may have done some things that you consider to be mistakes, things that you would not do yourself. But does that mean that they are not worthy of the value of a human being? They're not worthy of love. Do you have examples of someone who has shown love under those circumstances? There are tons of them. You don't have to think hard. Are there examples of people that you consider to be virtuous that have made mistakes? There are tons of examples of that. You don't have to think hard. I don't have to come up with them myself because I know everyone listening to this is capable of doing that. Once you start having those examples, point out to yourself, is this something that I can apply to more than one person? Because once you take something and make it individual, you can start to extrapolate it to other scenarios. And once you do that, you start to realize, is that more common or less common than what I was thinking in the first place? The problem is, this is terrifying. I can tell you, I've had numerous patients that really freak out when they get challenged on these points. In any aspect, I'm not picking one side over the other. I'm pointing out that I see this as an observer on both sides of many different discussions. And I'll admit my bias is to try and be the mediator. So maybe I do that too much. I'll admit that.
Ditto.
But I'm saying that having that type of approach yields better results in my experience than trying to create a different value system. What used to happen in many therapists' offices was the patient is wrong, I'm right. How do I get them to come to my conclusions? And you can imagine there's some adversity that would come about with that.
Just a bit.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to summarize here, and I'm sure there are people that are more eloquent that can do this, is to point out you don't have to take my value system and put it on yourself. If you can acknowledge that there are different value systems that are different shades of gray as opposed to purely black and white, then I think you're going to notice that the results you get with other people that you've never seen before, or people that you may not always interact with, will go smoother. It might actually be beneficial on, gasp, both sides. The idea that you can have slight adaptations to different circumstances, different conversations, different major agreements that have to be made on certain deadlines. Who knows? It might just work. I really hope it does, because that's pretty much what all of society is predicated upon. And the last thing I want to do is mess any of that up by saying 50% of people are wrong or 50% of people are right. To me, that sounds absurd. I'm not making political commentary here. We could be talking about sports teams.
I was going to say you're not trying to make political commentary, but I think certainly we can all recognize everything is political in some degree, one way or another. But having said that, I think your words ring very, very true. And I only hope that they some way, somehow reach the people that they need to reach, and that lessons are learned from them, whether it's the news reporter that we're talking about as the analog to J. Jonah Jameson, or any other individual who is in need of understanding and recognizing that not everyone needs to be demonized.
And I'll take it on a private level. We went to the same high school. I'm now friends at work with people that used to go to a couple of our rivals, and I don't view them as negative human beings. And yet, when we were in the same gym, I can guarantee you that there were thoughts of like, I should be slashing their tires. That's not fair to them as human beings. But acknowledging that you have those thoughts in the moment because of a certain randomized value system, it allows me to take a step back and say, that's in the moment and does not need to go further than that. That's absurd.
Oh, absolutely. I work with a wonderful woman who is a Saints fan. I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. As we're recording this, the Saints are working on trying to reach the Super Bowl. I have been praying numerous times that the Saints fail and that she is saddened for this and this alone. But otherwise, she's a perfectly wonderful human being.
So wait. So let me extrapolate that out. So what you're saying is you wish that every player on the New Orleans Saints has an incurable disease, that their families die, that they don't be allowed to exist in society anymore because they are not Carolina Panthers. If you were a Carolina Panther, you would be absolved of all sins that you've ever committed, that you will automatically go to a higher plane of existence that will allow you to save all of humanity in the short span that it takes for a football game to occur. Is that what you're saying?
Keep pounding. No, obviously that's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I am hoping that maybe Drew Brees gets a shoulder sprain and, maybe, again, I don't want serious injuries.
Right.
Nothing that's going to incapacitate or immobilize anybody. Just, a Charlie horse that keeps them immobile for about 3 hours, or, and I wish the same thing upon Julio Jones and Matt Ryan, or whatever poor sap happens to be, playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And the reason why using this as an example and what I just did, that actually is my point. That is I think, a very good magnifying lens to view this.
And having said that, the Patriots and their fans and Belichick and Brady.
So you're saying we're not going to be expanding well into Boston markets. And I don't mean the restaurant.
No. And I'm a Red Sox fan, so it's difficult for me.
And I'm a Yankees fan, and we're sitting across the microphones from each other. So once again, people, this is an example. You can have differences and you can still work them out. And if you're willing to have that type of mindset, you'll end up with people that you consider to be best friends for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. Now let's see what happens when we get J. Jonah Jameson on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Mr. Jameson. I'm Dr. Issues.
Nice to meet you, Doc. Now, when can I get out of here?
Well, first off, there's no smoking in my office. You'd think a man who suffered as many health setbacks as you would take better care of yourself.
And you think you'd be smart enough to realize I could die tomorrow with all those health setbacks? Might as well enjoy myself while I'm here. Besides, we're more likely to be endangered by that costumed vigilante than anything my body can do to me.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned Spider-Man. Would you care to enlighten me on your feelings towards him?
He's a menace, plain and simple. I've put it in the paper so many times I have pre-written headlines that I just copy and paste on the front page next to a photo. I have a bet with Robbie about how many times a year I can do it. My record is 53.
53 headlines proclaiming Spider-Man as a menace?
Menace, terror, criminal, vigilante. You have to keep it interesting or you lose the reader's interest. I don't like to repeat myself too many times.
Why all this anger towards a hero?
A hero?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Spider-Man has saved hundreds, if not thousands of New Yorkers, not to mention billions if you include all the times he's been with the Avengers.
He's created those opportunities. He hired those villains to make himself look good. I'm the only one who sees him for what he really is.
Whoa, that's quite a level of speculation and paranoia for someone who runs a newspaper.
Are you questioning my journalistic integrity?
Usually I'm not so blunt, but in your case, yes. I mean, okay. Let me take a step back. Allow me to give you the opportunity to explain how you, in good conscience, can predetermine what's happened with any human being.
People have patterns, and they don't change. Look at me. I've had the same lifestyle for over 40 years. Same haircut, same cigars, same 3 ties I wear to work every day. And I've been quite successful with it. That web crawler is screwed up so many times it's obvious and it needs to be dealt with. Whether it was with my newspaper or my term as mayor, my duty to the citizens of this city is to expose Spider-Man for the blot on decency that he is. Answer me this, Doc. If he's so great and wonderful, why doesn't he take his mask off? Real heroes don't wear masks. Just ask any policeman or fireman or my son. He's a hero. Never had to wear a mask either. But no, he gets put on the back burner thanks to freaks in spandex. It's time this city recognized the real heroes. That's my job.
So, how far have you moved the needle, doing the same thing for so many years?
My newspaper exposés about Spider-Man always sell well. People are interested in learning how terrible he is.
And how many people actually change their minds one way or the other?
We've had numerous polls in the Bugle about him, and there's always a sizable contingent of anti-Spider-Man people. I like to think I've awakened them to the truth.
So you're trying to make sure the same people that clearly are interested in this topic continue to read the same material so that you stay in business? I can't question the model, but I can question the growth.
Any publisher worth his salt knows you need a base. I give my base what they want, and I'm always looking for new readers, but...
Really? Really? I mean, so for new readers, you need new things. Please, come on, enlighten me.
New readers don't need new things. How many people read Shakespeare every year? That guy's been dead for centuries. People listen to old music, watch old TV shows. The classics are classics for a reason, and my story is classic. Just like my hair.
Okay, clearly you don't want to change, but do you know anything about the audience that you're missing? Do you even want the audience that you're missing? I mean, I can't tell based on what you're saying to me that you think you're the overwhelming majority or you don't mind pandering to a subset of the population.
Listen, I don't care about those hippies with their fancy coffee shops and skinny pants and podcasts.
You mean podcasts?
No, I mean podcasts, because only puds listen to some moron with a microphone in their house rambling on about useless junk.
And yet, if there were, I don't know, a podcast about Spider-Man and how much of a menace he is under the Bugle...
That's ridiculous. No one would ever listen to that. Wait a minute. I've got a brilliant idea. The Bugle should have a podcast about Spider-Man and how terrible he is. I can get those idiot kids to listen to me with their expensive headphones and slam that arachnid annoyance. And the best part is, I can charge them to listen. They'll pay for the privilege of hearing my dulcet tones explain how he needs to be stopped.
Well, that attempt at insight backfired. Look, what I was trying to get at is that as things change over time, you can have the same theme and have some modest adaptations. And also, to get back to Spider-Man as this so-called menace, hasn't he saved your life?
He only had to because he knew letting me die would just prove me right.
So he proved you wrong.
No, he didn't do it because he's a hero. He did it to try and save face. But I've exposed his facade for years, so it didn't work.
So he keeps saving people to make a selfish attempt at a positive image? And he's done it for years for that reason only? Does that actually make sense?
Now you get it. Took you long enough, Doc. I was really starting to question how smart you were and whether you deserve that fancy degree on the wall.
Mr. Jameson, are you aware of anyone else with a mask or not who would actually use that as a motivation for the rest of their lives?
That would have to be a pretty sad and pathetic person.
And I think the person that would continue telling that same story for the same number of years would have to be going down a very sad path as well.
Exactly.
And that person is you.
Spider-Man.
Okay, let's move on.
Take a breath, Doc. You look like Robbie 20 minutes before deadline.
With all the focus on such dramatic events on a regular basis, what are you doing so that I'll just say it, you don't keel over at your desk?
I enjoy my cigars. I have a nice glass of whiskey every night. And I go to bed at 1 a.m., so I make sure I get my 4 hours of sleep.
That sounds like you're 0 for 3. As a doctor, I'm required to inform you.
I'm still here, Doc. Ever hear of Jim Fix?
No.
Big jogging guru back in the 70s. TV appearances, books, you name it. Tried to get everyone running. Know what happened to him? Died of a heart attack while jogging. Point is, life is fleeting. Enjoy it while you can. Heart attacks don't scare me. I've had 3 of them, and my ticker is just as strong as ever.
Well, I can guarantee you it's not. As a matter of fact, the amount of scar tissue you probably have...
Doc, you're a head doc. I didn't come here to listen to a bunch of fake nonsense about my heart. In fact, I don't really know why I'm here. The insurance company made up some garbage that if I didn't show up here, they'd force me to pay out of pocket for surgery. And I refuse to pay 1 red cent to those commie bastards. Whoever thought socialized healthcare was the way to go needs to see you instead of me.
Here's the thing. Insurance is based on risk. And the insurance company views you as such a risk that they wanted me to determine if you were worth covering at all. This is not to lower your costs. It's to make sure you don't get dropped. And I know the bottom line is your bottom dollar. So even if it's not for any of the other things that you consider quackery or whatever, will you do it for your own wallet? Like, listen to anything I have to say.
Already have 30 seconds.
All right.
Make it 15. I'm busy.
Okay, stop smoking, stop drinking, lower your exposure to Spider-Man, and it's going to save you at least 50% of your premiums. Laugh more, talk less, realize you're not the smartest man in the room.
50%? That's a good chunk of change. Change for change. I like it. We'll have a new column in the Bugle about it. Psychiatry and economics together. I'm a genius.
I guess I could take some credit, but are you actually going to do the changes for yourself? Because that's kind of the point.
We'll see, Doc. I'll take it under advisement.
Well, that's more than I hoped for, the way this is going.
Fine. Hey, wait a minute. You're not really a doctor. You're one of those costumed freaks. You're trying to trick me.
What?
You tried to get me to stop focusing on costume characters. That's why you all ganged up on me.
Are you okay?
Don't try and fool me. I can see all 3 of you sitting here. You wait until my guard was down to show your true colors.
Mr. Jameson, you sound delirious.
I'm not delirious. I see the truth. And as soon as my arm stops hurting, I'm going to write a long editorial about...
Somehow I don't think this is a panic attack. Oh, definitely not. Medic!
You know, I think that may have been the first session where the patient got hurt and you're okay.
Well, that's all right, because as a part of CPR, if you see someone and you know they're having a cardiac arrest, you can actually punch them in the chest. I'm not making that up.
No, I believe it.
I mean, I may have just wanted to punch Jameson, but I'm saying it helped.
Yeah. Well, you may have had other additional reasons, but your primary motivation was saving his life.
Yeah, I don't...
Correct?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't know about the second and third punches, but the first one definitely...
You're supposed to punch the chest, not the face.
Oh, yeah. Right. Very, very true. You know, I just couldn't do mouth to mouth, so mouth to fist sounded good.
Well done, sir. So, this is our first episode of the new year, and if I don't know if we're going to be able to top this one. I think looking back in December, we're going to look back on this one very fondly and say we certainly set the bar very, very high.
Right. In other words, it's all downhill from here, people. We can't apologize for, maxing out when we started the new year.
I don't know that I'd say we can't go higher than this, but we certainly set the bar very high for the rest of the episodes for the following year.
In that case, I'll put a positive spin. We're going to be setting new records time after time if we can top this.
Sure. Let's go with that. I did say one of the goals on our website was for us to reach 25,000 downloads for 2019. And we'll see what we can do. We'll see what our numbers look like for January at the end of the month and continue to move forward. So next week, I know it's a little late. Aquaman came out last month, but we're going to do Black Manta. So that one should be a fun and interesting episode.
Oh, I'm glad you're definitely taking a positive spin on that. I apologize. I'm not a huge Aquaman kind of guy, so this is going to be a unique experience for me.
Yeah, doing the research on this one was definitely a little different than what we usually cover, but, we're trying to be timely. at least as much as we can. So the following week, so after Black Manta, we're going to do Negan. We'll return to The Walking Dead. I know Negan was one of the options many moons ago when we had our listener poll back in October for the listener chosen episode, and the fans ended up going with the governor. Yep. And we could have done Negan or Rick Grimes. So we'll do Negan, which gives me an opportunity to go back and revisit some of the Walking Dead books that I still have here.
And it gives me a reason to say, hey, I dislike all of you that didn't vote for Negan. Of course, I don't really mean that.
Mostly. So following that, we're going to do The Chief from Doom Patrol, which is going to be debuting on the DC Universe app in February. So that TV show will be coming out to tie in with Titans and their whole Batman dark dynamic thing that they have going on. So I haven't seen any of it yet. I have not subscribed to DC Universe. If you have, please, feel free to tell us what you think of Titans so far and how good of a show it is or isn't. And then Doom Patrol, we're going to be covering The Chief. And then in February, I didn't ask for this. I just want to be perfectly clear. This was a choice made by Brian. He is one of our patrons. He asked that we do an episode on Captain America.
I also need to point out that Brian is a longtime friend of Anthony, and Anthony loves Captain America. You do the math, considering that early on in this entire run of podcast, we did Moon Knight.
Yeah, but I don't have Moon Knight tattooed on my body yet. I do have the Captain America shield tattooed on my shoulder blade. So I think I broke Doc over there with that yet. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure. Just go something generic like a crescent moon or something. You don't have to put Moon Knight on your body. Well, I meant if I ever did get a Moon Knight tattoo, it was probably going to be a crescent and an ankh, but
good enough.
I'm not there yet. I haven't figured out a location and a cool enough tattoo.
The location is nowhere and the time is never. Thank you.
So that is going to wrap it up for this episode. So thank you very much for listening. You can find us on social media. You can find us first off on our website, capesonthecouch.live. You can check us out on social media, Twitter at capesonthecouch, Instagram at capesonthecouch, email us capesonthecouch@gmail.com. You can find our episodes on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify. Pretty much all of the major podcasting platforms and networks carry the show at this point. If you listen to us and follow us on a platform that allows you to rate and review, please like and subscribe and leave us a positive rating and review, and we will read your ratings in a future episode. So, Doc, anything you want to add before we close?
I'm actually going to pimp out the blog post that I'm going to put on J. Jonah Jameson, because I want to address a few of the things that our president subscriber, Matt, wanted to talk about, including nicotine. The fact that the man was smoking in my office and it really pissed me off.
Calm down, take a breath. Maybe not a deep breath. Maybe not right here. Maybe go outside, open a window or something, although it is January. Get some fresh air. So that's going to wrap it up for Doc Issues. I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.